Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Welcome to yet another Cadeon webinar. And today we're presenting on data and more. So a couple of announcements just before we kick things off here. I want to draw your attention. If I could have the next slide, please. Cadeon, okay. So let's talk about the agenda. That's probably a good place to start. We'll have introductions. We got Yap and Sag from Data and More that are going to do the overview, and then we'll have Q&A. Next slide, please. We'll get to the announcements. Oh, sorry. Let's do the intros first. Man, I got the announcements on the brain. All right. I'm Phil, President and CEO and allegedly boss guy. Amanda, do you want to say hello?
Absolutely. Good afternoon, everybody. Amanda Summers. I'm the Director of Client Engagement at Cadeon, and I'm the sales gal.
All right. Yap, over to you.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for taking the time today. My name is Jaap in the central of Alberta. Red Deer represents. I'm the General Manager for Data and More North America.
Fantastic. Thank you, Yap. And Sag, last but not least.
There you go. Hi, good morning, good afternoon. I'm Sag, and I am responsible for all things implementation and technical at Data and More North America.
Fabulous. Thanks, guys. Just a couple of quick announcements. I've been trying to get these in already for 5 minutes. So just let everybody know, we actually are doing what's called a Calgary Energy Forum event on July 9th. So for those of you not from Calgary, I know that doesn't help you. I don't know if we'll record it, but this is kind of a replay from what we saw from our partner Spotfire in Houston 2 weeks ago now, I believe. And so we're going to actually do that locally. Now, again, as I mentioned at the top, we are doing a webinar series. Our next webinar actually would be more of a lunch and learn, and that's slated for sometime in August. Don't have a date yet, and the topic is still being, I guess, discussed and finalized. There is a new version of Spotfire coming out, so we might be talking about that. That's version 14.5. There's a few other things that are happening as well, so stay tuned on that for an announcement. But we do want to keep the momentum here, so thanks very much for everybody for joining today. So why are we doing this webinar today? Today is about our strategic partnership with Data and More. When I first saw Data and More through a mutual customer, I was blown away with the capability that they have. I was also blown away with the amount of risk that there is with turning on things like Copilot. But more than that, it's like, I think it's the lack of awareness that folks have. Like, we have data all over everywhere, right? And that continues to grow every single day. But even knowing where that data is, what are the single sources of the truth? 10% of your data basically is in structured database. 90% of that data actually lives in unstructured. And I bet you a good majority, and you guys will probably talk about this, how much lives in email? There's my first prompt question for you, Yap, when you get going. Of all the assessments you guys have done, how much of that data actually lives in email?
Sure, I'll answer that as we go along.
Okay, sounds good. So really today is, what are the impacts of data breaches? So in this world of AI, speaking of AI, there's ethical AI and then there's the unethical AI. So we know data breaches are on the rise. We know hacks are on the rise. We know they're getting more and more sophisticated with the technology that's available. So really knowing the risk and exposure of your organization is very critical in 2025 and beyond, for sure. And then where is your data? Is there any IP that the company has that's exposed, whether that be through email, through any documents, should somebody, heaven forbid, hack your environment? So those are the things that we're going to talk about on this webinar today. So we're super excited. Very important conversation that we're going to have today. So please, this is an interactive session. We'll be monitoring the chat and we'll be looking for your questions. So please feel free to engage. I think that's over to Amanda.
Okay, great. And thanks again for everybody that made the time to join us today. And we really do feel, like Phil said, that this is really relevant topics for our clients. And when we have the conversation around data with our clients and starting projects like Copilot, or even doing assessments or trying to roll different projects out, it's our data. We're not quite sure how many duplicates we have in the wild. we're not sure of the personal identifiable information in there. And so there's sort of this pause and this kind of unknown about how do we go about this. So hopefully today, that's what you'll gain out of this momentum, is what can be done and how easily it can be. So from a Cadeon standpoint, and why we chose Data and More as a partner, is our whole kind of tagline is around innovation through information, or information through innovation. So we can say it both ways. And we focus really on that data layer, data readiness, data quality, governance, risk, and compliance as part of what we do. Next slide, please, Steg. Or sorry, yeah. Part of our services capability here, and it goes under the number one circle, is around that governance, risk, and quality component of this. Being able to identify how many documents are in the wild, where is our single source of truth lie, what is the risk associated with that if we were breached, and can we eventually get compliant to provide quality data for projects so that we can gain valuable insights. And so just wanted to show you this in terms of where it fits from a Cadeon standpoint and why we chose them as a partner. And so you can kind of see when we figure out where the data lies, where the risk is, we can put governance in place through data stewardship, through different processes that we can help you build and identify to help reduce that overall risk for you kind of going forward. So hopefully that just brings context to why Cadeon chose Data and More as a strategic partner within what we do. So Yap, I think with that, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Sounds like a plan, and thank you for a fantastic introduction. I like disruption. So what I'm going to do today is do everything in reverse. I'm going to answer every question and not make you wait till the end. Like, remember, if you scroll on Instagram, they're like, oh, stay till the end and then we'll show you. I prefer to just answer all the questions in the beginning. So if you have questions in the chat, just ask them, and then Phil will monitor them. And worst case scenario, you're probably going to get an answer to them. So what I'll do today is give you a bit of an introduction about the piece of the pie, the puzzle that we solve, why it's important for you and any organization that has data, so arguably you. What we can do, we don't just approach this from an argument of a problem, but also where it stops you from progressing going forward. What I'd like you to know about Data More as a company is that we're a software vendor. We've been around since 2016, born and raised in GDPR country in Copenhagen. So we focused a lot of time on ensuring that we can identify and classify a right amount of data in all the different languages, with all the phrases, with all the meanings and everything else. And then, of course, we need to be able to do something with it. Now, in the webinar, in the invite, we promised you some stats. So like I said, I'd like to disrupt, like give you all the information beforehand, and then explain to you why this is relevant or interesting to you. So I'm actually going to start with maybe why you joined to begin with. What does Gartner recommend? What are the trends? And when you look at any data company, you look at any data analytics company, look at the top 4, 5, 6 initiatives. Investments in AI-ready data initiatives, data quality, data governance, the architecture that supports it, data integration, data preparation, active metadata, tools and practices, and then we're really all the way at the bottom already. So the question then becomes is, well, why? Why is this so relevant, and why is this so interesting? And when we simply approached it from different topics, like either compliance, or we're looking at risk, we're looking at security, or we're looking at enablement like AI, we're looking at enablement from a security point of view like Microsoft Purview, DLP. There's a wide variety of reasons to why these recommendations are so important. The biggest one probably right now is that everybody probably, and I'm assuming here, has some form of money or gets some form of budgeting or some form of questions from management about AI, right? What does it mean for us? And so the first thing that I like to do with organizations is really classify the question. And so the question is, when you say AI, what are you talking about? Are we talking about tools? Are we talking about creation? Are we talking about analytics? Are we talking, what exactly are we talking about? Because there's a wide variety of it. And usually when people talk to me about AI, they mention the word Copilot, and they mention the word about things like, oh, we have to rewrite emails, or we need to analyze data, or we need to do something. There's a wide variety of reasons as to why, but 99% of the people end up with gadgets, right? Optimization for help me rewrite my email, or they look at LinkedIn and be like, again, optimize my messaging. There's a lot of stuff that you can do when it comes down to outreach. Agentic AI is going to be a very popular one. But when you look at the overall strategy, and this is what Satya Nadella from Microsoft has been saying for quite some time now, the ultimate vision of Copilot is not that they're trying to sell you necessarily AI as a product. What they're trying to do, and this is where they're going and they want to go, is that they want to have Copilot as a communication layer that communicates with all the underneath laying agents of AI. And how you wish to analyze that or work with that's really up to you. Right. But right now, everybody looks at Copilot and be like, wow, I need to spend $100,000 and I need to do something with it. I need to manage it. I need to work with it. There's something that, well, I have data. Let's mix it up with Copilot and then we're going to produce magic. Right now, there's all kinds of varieties of reasons to why that works or why it doesn't work. But just be having an AI agent dumping some data in it and having one element coming out of it is usually how people tend to approach it. When the reality is significantly different, and I can walk you even through some of the slides that Microsoft is
So
giving me.
yeah, yeah. If I
Please,
can interrupt for 1 second, we actually have our first question from Carl.
Carl.
So, and it's kind of a qualifying one, and I know Sag is typing response, but I think it's worthy of mentioning. So the question is, in what sectors do you practice, and what proportion does each sector represent of your clients?
Oh, that's a hard question. Let me actually skip. So that works out. When it comes down to who do we serve? Well, we have hundreds of customers and they're really all over the place. I'm skipping to this a little bit to answer your question, Carl, because basically every single person who has data, we help. It's really that simple. You have unstructured data, you got email, you got Exchange, you got SharePoint, OneDrive, you got Google Cloud, Google Drive. Effectively, we are targeting you. That's really the answer. And in our process, let me actually answer your question first, Phil, because you were first. We've analyzed billions and billions of data sets. We effectively asked a bunch of our customers, can we use some of your data purely anonymously, but can we analyze this and put it in a report? A bunch of them said yes. We ended up with 1 billion different data sets. And we found that over 90% of personal identifiable information, some of your risk, login, passwords, everything else, actually is in email. Whether it's Google, whether it's you're looking at using Gemini, whether it's Exchange, Microsoft, you're looking at Copilot, it's actually in there. So when it comes down to the different industries, we are actually able to serve and also analyze the different elements of what organizations have in all kinds of different verticals. And the verticals are different. I completely understand that. But when it comes down to even some of how do we analyze different verticals, we can find that privacy data is very different in wholesale compared to financial, manufacturing, municipalities. Any organization that is very customer focused, like financial, where you have a lot of mortgages, a lot of contracts, these type of things, it is going to be varying. But funny enough, when it comes down to who do we serve, well, it's all of the above, even though the consequences are slightly different. The question is more important of what kind of data do you have, where is it located, and what are we trying to do with it?
Yeah, and Sag, you've got the finance is the obvious one that comes to mind, and your largest category.
Yes.
And certainly because of regulations, and you talked about GDPR, and I believe we have a few here in Canada as well, that you have to be aware of. But I mean, for us, like we see it in energy, we see it in finance, we see it in manufacturing. I think there's compliance, and we're actually even seeing it for people that are trying to validate their cyber insurance, right? Like for companies that have to buy cybersecurity insurance just in case they get hacked, that becomes a problem for them. They have to be able to now provide information to say they're doing their due diligence. So,
And
but
I
anyway,
and I was
sorry,
just
go
going to
ahead.
add one more thing. The type of data that is found is within, like, spread throughout the organization. So whether it's HR doing terminations, resumes, any social security numbers, anything like that, any organization that has travel, thinking about passport, any organization that does expenses, expense statements that might have credit card data in it. All of those types of information are what this tool is looking for versus kind of truly focused on an industry, is how I'd answer that. So,
Yeah, no, perfect.
Now, adding to that, I did post in the comments that if you're looking for statistics, about 60% of the customers that we have are subject to some sort of legal or regulatory compliance. So not necessarily that we're a better fit for those companies. They just tend to care more about solving the problem rather than just hand waving at a policy or something like that. So that tends to be our biggest bucket. And then our next biggest portion of customers are the ones with sensitive intellectual property that they will lose significant market share or be exposed to some sort of compelling risk if they lose it. So they are using us to find their privacy data and also their intellectual property or sensitive business data.
Sure.
Awesome.
When it comes down to budgeting, what we can see even here in Alberta, right? So the Alberta government, because of our cold weather, which I really like, so that's why I'm in the basement right now. But the Alberta government is spending a whole lot of money on AI data centers, and actually BC is doing the same, whether it makes the news or not. And the reality is that we can make AI available, but the question then becomes is from a strategic point of view, what exactly are we making available? Because if the only thing that we are making available to our customers and how we are utilizing it ourselves is a tool or a gadget that effectively helps you rewrite some of your components, then well, we're really competing with every country out there. So then the question is, okay, is it just really who can build the most data centers? Is that a challenge that we have? Because right now, what we're seeing, especially with our customers in Europe because of GDPR, they're a little bit ahead when it comes down to legislation, is that a lot of companies have to rebuild any AI effort for one simple reason. If you put illegal data into AI, you can't delete it. You can't undo it. It won't unlearn it. So I'm not talking about the tools and the gadgets. I'm talking about if we're building language models that really communicate with, rely on AI agents, then you need to have a little bit more than just data and AI, right? We have to map it out. We have to either be inclusive or exclusive in our strategies. We got whole slide decks on this. For if you want to have that conversation, please let us know. Happy to facilitate that. But we have to go a little bit beyond the gadget scenarios. And if we want to do it for our own organizations and we want to be part of that, we really need to start looking into the making sure that the right data is in the right places with the right locations, with the right tags, the right everything. So what we're seeing in Europe right now is that companies are faced with two scenarios, either delete everything and restart or pay fines. Now, there's lots of scenarios, and again, I can just flip around a little bit. Lots of scenarios like this where Google this in the last month, they were forced just in Texas alone to pay $1.4 billion. And this happens all the time now. You can Google this yourself. Meta, again, within the last 12 months, also $1.4 billion, etc. Effectively, one reason, and that is how they manage, handle, process, and deal with data. Now, if you have $1.4 billion laying around that you don't mind going to waste, well, first of all, I'd love to talk to you because we don't mind taking some of it. But the reality is that we need to have a foundation. And that foundation cannot be sinking sand, right? To use other analogies. The foundation has to be solid. When we're building our house, our strategy, our vision, our mission, everything else, it cannot just be, I'm spending $100,000 to help me rewrite my email. If we're using what our companies has to offer, where we're going and what we're doing and what we need to do, we need to have this foundation. Now, here's the reality. I've been in the Microsoft space for almost 20 years. Now, that alone doesn't have to impress you, but we have meetings with CIOs, directors of IT, CEOs, compliance officers, risk officers, security officers, all day, every day. And this goes from very small companies to the majority of the mid-size, all the way up to all the big banks in Canada, the Blackstones, the BlackRocks, the bigger companies. In those 20 years, I have never met anyone that knows what data they have. And So this is why I call this slide the 100% issue, because we can get away with it if we're purely looking at it from a reduced risk or become more compliant or anything else. But when we're looking to use our data and utilize it and actually have it work for us, we need to know where it is, because if we're putting illegal, unwanted, or unsecured or unprotected data in AI, it's a one-time track, right? We can't undo it. So the reality is that if you're on this webinar and you're the first company in the history of my 20 years of Microsoft, then you know exactly what data you have. Please let us know, and I will put a good word in with Phil, and we will blast you all over every webinar, also with data more, because you will literally be the first. So when we're talking as a government, as a province, as a country, as a continent, about we need to move ahead with data, well, again, Gartner recommends the top 5 out of 6 elements is get your data ready, focus on data quality, make sure it's at the right place, make sure it's protected. And I have never met anyone that knows this. So we have a massive, massive disconnect. So the question now is kind of great, like, okay, what is it? And we talked a little bit about verticals. We talked a little bit about why we do things. Well, again, why you might do things is varies greatly, right? We tend to work with in Europe. We do a lot of compliancy projects, and if you're looking at it from a compliance point of view, what you want is you want to have as less data as possible. Why? Less data equals more compliance. The more data you have, the less compliant you are. That's just basic rule. When it comes down from risk, you just want to be able to identify it, classify it, and then automatically put a sensitivity label, retention label, or tag, or mark, or something on it. You want to be able to identify where your copies are of sensitive data. You want to know who has access to it. You want to know how your rights are working. And through our journey with Microsoft, we've seen this for a very long time, that it really is all over the place. I can share many examples, but then I would be going over time. So here are some of the tips and tricks of conversations that we have all day, every day, how we help organizations to tackle this story. Some of the pitfalls, if you're looking into this, where you might want to run away in the opposite direction very, very quickly. And then I have got a whole bunch of different examples for you and scenarios that we can walk through. The first question is, well, when we're looking to identify and classify data, what kind of data do you have? Where is it located? What do you have? How much do you have? Is it a problem? And how do you want to utilize it? And right now, up to, let's say, about a year and a half ago, you had 2 paths. The first one is you have a data crawler or a searcher, where effectively, let's say you have a terabyte of data and you're looking for something, right? Show me a password or show me a regular expression. That searcher crawler would crawl through all your data. It might take a very long time. Funny enough, we have customers where a searcher or crawler would take 2.5 years to complete. Because of the sheer amount of data that they have. Now, this was probably not you. If it is you, we should even talk even more. But the point is that you can search for data, right? Show me a regular expression. The other side of the coin would be indexation, right? We index data, and then you get a wide variety of options of, okay, now what do we do with this index? It's the same with your computer. Like you look on your C drive, you look for a file, it's just crawling, it's just searching. And then it will say on top, do you want to index this for future searches? It will be fast, it will be on demand. We can do everything really fast, quick, easy, and everything else. That is the journey that we're having too. Now, what we're seeing in the last year or so is that a lot of companies are offering AI for classification. Now, here's the challenge, because you're literally sending all your data out to usually another location, being processed by AI, and then it comes back with either good, incorrect, or whatever data it is. Now, AIs keep getting better, but we're having literally the definition of a data breach, which is also the definition of Copilot, by the way. You're sending all your data to another server, another location, everything else. And that data now is being processed by a language model, which hopefully will act the way that you want it. Again, everything will get better and better, but these are some of the consideration that you want to have and that you want to keep in mind. Now, when it comes down to classification, there are a wide variety, again, of how do we do things. What we've chosen to do is we've been building this out since 2016. So we have been working in Europe. So we now are working with over 27 different languages. 28 different compliancy laws. And the reason that languages is important for everyone on the call who's multilingual like myself, you will know that using a word may or may not be the same in one language and doesn't translate at all in another language. And so when we're looking at phrases, meanings, everything else, PII is not just to show me a document or a passport or anything else. PII can also be information about sexuality, political content. It can be financial, and financial can be something like your bonus agreement, your contract, where you work, how you do things, everything else. It goes significantly further than. Now, if I send Amanda or Phil or Zach, if I send them an email and I'm using the word Democrat or bonus, or I mention my school, that doesn't make me a political activist or doesn't make it financial content. And it certainly doesn't mean that my email needs to be having a sensitivity label of the highest priority. So there's a wide variety of how do you truly and accurately classify data. So for us, what we've done is we built a whole collection of, well, there's over 30 million rules and anti-rules and definitions and catalogs and phrases and meanings and everything else that we've been building out, and we keep building out more and more and more. But being able to utilize that, for example, if we're looking for a passport, it's not just show me a regular expression, because the problem is that you end up with usually about 7,000% of false positives. What is a passport in one is a project number in another and a Bulgarian phone number in another. It can be a wide variety of things. So then what you end up is you're still going to have to manually go through everything. So to accurately identify, classify is an absolute key. The next tip and trick that we have is that no matter what you're doing, you can either go manual, hint, nobody should do that, or you look at a tool. Now, for any tool, our recommendation, and of course we're completely biased, but it is absolutely true. You really want to have three things in any tool that you have. The first one is completely challenge the concept of how can you accurately identify data, because people will use the same terminologies about AI as they do about classification in your face. So I said, oh, it's AI powered. And if that's good enough for you, then okay, good, but it shouldn't be. So when it comes down to classification, again, how do you process this accurately? How can you guarantee results, right? The next thing is that just being able to identify and classify data is a fantastic start. It really is. But we need to be able to do something with it. Like, what can you actually do with it? If we do a lot of assessments for prospects and customers and everything else, we usually throw 50,000 problems in your face. Now, if that's it, and we give you what I like to call a do-it-yourself package, then that's not really helpful, because by law you now have to do something about it. So if we show you that you have 10, 15, 100,000 problems and you don't do something with it, now you're negligent, which is a problem. Because even when you look at, for example, the topic that was mentioned earlier, cybersecurity insurance, like a lot of the security commissions that we have here in Canada, like the Alberta Security Commissions, but also the Ontario Security Commissions, they require audits. And one of the things they would like you to show them is show me not just your perfectly prepared site or location or anything else, but show me the security rules. And then they also throw a curveball in your face and they will tell you, show me where all the copies are of data. And that's why every financial organization right now is failing audits. Now, there are ways to get a check mark, don't get me wrong, but that's not actually passing an audit. If you want to be able to identify and classify not just data, PII, sensitive data, security risk, and anything else, but also where all the copies are, where your vulnerabilities are, and what data you were about to put in AI, that is something that's very, very important. So we identify it, classify it. You need to be able to do something with it. Do we archive it? Do we delete it? Do we tag it? Do we map it out? Do we simply put a label on top of it? What does it mean? And that is something where you also have to be able to use exception management. Whatever we have as an offering needs to be able to be mapped with your policies, procedures, wishes, desires. So if we, for example, present custodian reports, if we send out data stewards reports, if we send out end user reports, if we present data based on department or location or anything else, we need to be able to map out. So if a user says this is highly sensitive data, maybe we automatically map it to a purview sensitivity label. If we're talking retention policies, what are they? What do they look like? If we're talking AI, maybe we should look at what kind of policy you're trying to follow. Do we include data or exclude data? Are we looking to simply activate a gadget and exclude PII and every other form of passwords and everything else? Or do we use more of an inclusion where you start looking at building true AI agents based on actual data that has been ciphered through, that has been mapped out, that has been made ready, that's been labeled and accordingly, and now we can use it. Because there's many ways that you can use AI, coming back to my original topic. My actual favorite AI example in the whole world is where in hospitality organizations are using AI to map out the history of a patient with actual pictures and scans that they have. And this was an example where a young lady who was practically blind walked into the clinic. They AI analyzed about 20 million different examples in about 2 seconds. Wasn't able to do a surgery based on those analysis, and by the end of the day, walked out with more than 20/20 vision. And these are the type of examples where I just get super excited and happy, and they really they do a lot to me. But when it comes down to what is it for you and within your industry, well, it's going to greatly vary. And the cool thing is that we have the experience, we have the knowledge, we have the guidance, which of course executed through Cadeon. But this is the stuff that we help you with. So one of the things that we tend to do, and I'll fly through this pretty quickly, and then I've got some more examples for you. But one of the things we do a lot is we do assessments. Why? Because there's a lot of fluff out there. There's a lot of companies promising you the end of the world. There's a lot of organizations that use a lot of fake terms. And so what we decided to do is, well, we have the infrastructure, we have the ability, we have the software. It's 95% fully automated. At least the implementation is at this point, where we can just offer assessments. And in these assessments, all we do is we take a data set, a subset. Of your data. This can be like an AD group. This can be some data on Exchange. If you don't like it, you can send us some. And we effectively take about 5 gigs to maybe 100 gigs. If you have more, and or if you're a special customer, again, happy to have that conversation. But we do these assessments all day, every day. Why? Because we know what we're going to find. We did one the other day for an organization in Texas, and we only took 2 users, the CISO himself and the assistant of the CEO. And then we were able to explain to them, it's like, well, for some reason, the assistant of the CEO keeps an entire list of people's passwords that have been provided throughout the last 13 years. Before we give that person access to Copilot, which means all that data is now going to be ingested by AI, maybe we should do something with it. And then the question, of course, becomes more valuable. Should we just put a sensitivity label on it? Should we archive it, delete it, relocate it? Those are questions that you have. But it gets really, really intriguing, really interesting, because based on the results, we can show you what your risk profile is. Now, when it comes down to value, there's a wide variety. I put a bunch of slides in here, either for governance or risk or anything else. These, I'm not going to go through them, but if you want to, either if you're watching the recording, you can just screen grab, or if you want to take screenplays, you can absolutely do so. These are just some examples where it's governance, or when we're looking at risk, of how we can really, really help you. So if you're more interested in risk, these are some of the things. If you're looking for more about compliance, here's some of the elements that we can really, really help you. And the same with AI Copilot implementations. And again, it doesn't have to be Copilot. We're a data company. We're not a security company. We're not a full-fledged AI company. We take care of your data. But
So yeah, on
yes.
on that, just because we're talking about classification and stuff like that, and I've been asking the audience a few questions, but I'm going to ask you as well. Like, so when you talk to customers based on these assessments that you do all day, every day, what kind of data do you find customers would like to find? Like, are they more interested from what is their risk? Is there something specific? And again, the consulting answer probably is it depends. But if there were some general themes based on all the assessments that you guys have run, what would you say? What would you say that people are after?
I It's usually, I would say, it's tied down to people's jobs, to where they're interested in, and the initiatives that they have money. I can actually switch this up a little bit and blah, blah, blah. I've got an example here because what we create effectively is we do an assessment for an organization. And there's a big difference between what people are looking for and what they walk away with. And here's what I mean with this. So the same company in Texas, they actually wanted to buy it for an AI initiative. They wanted to effectively do that and be like, well, this is where my budget is. This is why I have it. Now we did the assessment for them. This is not them. This is another company, but the assessments look very, very similar. And what they walked away with, and basically saying that, well, if I actually display this as a security project, I can get this in significantly quicker because we can do a lot with security. I have the budget for this. And then on the side, behind the scenes, or however you want to call it, I'm going to start using this as my AI company. Now, they're of an AI product. What they're using it for, it really depends because when we do these assessments, we're going to create, well, frankly, a whole bunch of shock moments. We're going to be able to walk you through. We're going to be able to show you some indications. I'll walk you quickly through this. This is a Canadian company in Ontario where we take a sample set of their data. This actually equals 19% of their data. And we've taken for this assessment, we've taken a lot of data. This is actually 19% of the data. We've taken Exchange, SharePoint, OneDrive, and here's how it's built out. Now, one of the first things that we're going to be able to demonstrate to an organization is all the usual stuff, right? So we have 30 million different definitions that we put in a whole bunch of different types of classifications. These classifications are, well, frankly, standard. And they're, again, rules and anti-rules before they actually truly are classified as something. But we're also going to be able to show you, well, here's how old your data is. And frankly, if you look in the column of, well, here's a lot of data that is 10 years old. Well, that's pretty intriguing. And again, Phil, coming back to your point, over 90% tends to be in Exchange. So when we start showing these things, but again, this is the first time in the history of this company that they actually have insights in their data. They've been running data governance programs for 12 years, and for the first time, they now have insight into the what do we have, because we collect everything, not just the metadata. We go in documents, we look at pictures, we OCR the pictures, we know everything. So we know how many items are created. We know the density, so how many items are roughly going to be PII. We know how fast it is, how they're growing. We know a lot of stuff. And one of the first things that we're going to do to, well, frankly, shock you a little bit because people really don't know what data they have, is we're going to show you a quantification of the risk. And specifically, in this case, we're using IBM's, they have a report last year. It's called Cost of a Data Breach, where effectively they looked at two things. The first one is how much is my data worth on the black market? And the second question is how many fines am I going to get from Mark Carney or Donald Trump, whichever one you're under? How many fines are they're going to give me if we have a big data breach, especially if it's public? Now, this is not taking into account reputational damage, vendor damage, and anything else. This is purely from a legislation as well. So we looked at this again, 19% of the data. This is a company of about 500 users. They're union based and education, to give you guys a bit of background. And we found that their 19% of data has a risk profile using IBM's numbers of almost $20 million US. But remember, we know what data they have. We know how many items they're creating, and we know the density, and we know a whole bunch of other stuff. So we explained to them every month you don't do something, your risk profile grows with almost 437,000 US every single month that you don't do something. Now, this is looking back, right? This is just simply looking at the current state. But they had other questions as well. Who are the biggest offenders? But the other question was, how AI ready are we? So we started looking at the concept of exclusion, right? We have data, we can buy Copilot. What can we put together and create magic? And effectively, we're able to explain that these guys it's a union, they had a huge amount of shared inboxes. Normally, this is about 90%, but we were able to explain to them, right now, you can activate Copilot to over 49% of your mailboxes, 85% of your SharePoint sites, and over 60% on OneDrive without putting illegal data in it. Again, there's no deletion in vectors, Mantec, or any of the language models databases. There just isn't. And when we go through these things, we go through these assessments. Again, if you're a security professional, you're going to react different than a compliancy officer. Because when we go through different examples, we found a whole bunch of credit cards. We found death certificates. And our team had a thought, and we were like, can we come up with a reason why it's acceptable to have death certificates under law? And we tried to be as creative as we could. We could not come up with a reasonable reason why Frank's Sent folder was the corporate approved version of the beholder of the company of death certificates. Now, what we also found, that's not in the report, is that people were just uploading their holiday pictures on OneDrive. And maybe you do it, maybe other people do it, we get it. But when you were about to ingest bikini pictures of 6-year-old little girls into AI, maybe, just maybe, we should have a conversation about this before you do it and before you activate it. So we were going through this, and we do this all the time. It's the same with data breaches. We're being asked to analyze data that's available in the black market, and we show companies list of passwords, root access to your servers. And in a whole bunch of different cases, the passwords were still valid. So we go through this.
Yeah, I gotta interrupt a little bit.
Yes.
Sorry. Just because time check. We're almost at 1:15, and but before we leave this, I think if I was listening to the webinar, can you give the folks listening order of magnitude? You do these all day long, every day. What do they cost?
So when it comes down to what do we actually do with it, going back to my slides, well, we actually offer the assessment for free. But we have two types of assessments. If we're looking for a subset of data, limited group, so 5, 10, 15, if Cadeon really likes you, we can push it to 20 people. But we're looking at a subset of people with a limited amount of data. Normally, we're looking at 25 or 50 gigabytes of data. Again, if Cadeon really likes you, we can probably push it to 100. And we will show you and demonstrate everything that's happening with your environment, everything else. The second one that we offer is that if you're a serious customer and we're just looking to get going, you want some guarantees, we want some pinky promises notes, we can actually do a free, not a free, but a full pilot implementation on your environment. That one, we'll have to talk a little bit about the terms and conditions and anything else, but we're a very reasonable organization. Any company, though, anyone who's listening and wants to try this out for themselves on a subset of data, you get the Cadeon special. So that one is free.
Awesome. Yeah, that's fantastic. And by the way, for the record, Cadeon likes everybody on this call. So
And I would just add, Yap, I think it's important for folks to know that the tool itself can be deployed on-prem or in the cloud. So if you're worried about your data getting outside and they need read access only, they don't need full access to all of your data for any assessment that they run. So just wanted to clarify that.
Yeah, no, that's great. It's very important to, as a customer, to go through these things. And what I'll tell you is that we sell to secret agencies, military agencies, government agencies, police regions, and we do this because we have different deployment options. If you are, let's call them super strict or careful with your data, not implying that the rest is not, what we can actually do is we can deploy everything in your environment. You can literally put us in a DMZ with no connection to the outside, no access to anyone that you don't approve of, and everything will still work. So this is how we can guarantee that our software can work for you.
Okay, fantastic. And yeah, we're 1:15, so if we could kind of wrap in the next 10, I think that would be good.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, this was really it. So this was my last slide. You are able to identify you have a problem. If we want to move forward, we can. We want to help you. We can show you how it's done. And my hope really is that together we can put Alberta on the map for a wide variety of reasons, and all of Canada and then North America, of course, because simply ignoring your data isn't going to put us as a country, a nation, a continent. It's not going to put North America on the map. It simply means that every single person with cheap energy, graphic cards, or anybody else is our direct competitors. If we, however, start focusing on data quality, then we are getting ready to really start utilizing AI and everything else. It's not just about solving problems. It's about creating options and the ability to put not just your company, but also your province, your state, your nation ahead of everybody else. You'll become more competitive, have more options and everything else. That is really my last slide. So happy to answer any questions if you guys have any. If not, I can take some custom scenarios or everything else.
That sounds really good. Thank you very much, Jaap, for covering that today. I mean, I think it underscores the importance of knowing thy data for sure and the risks associated with the data. I think there's many folks, although we didn't get a lot of interaction from the group today, I know that it's very Copilot and an AI of any kind is very topical. And we talk to a lot of our customers right now that are looking at going down the path. I kind of view it as 2025 is everybody's thinking about Copilot. 2026 is everybody's going to be implementing it. And I think like for the length of time, maybe that's a question for you. How long does it take? Like once a assessment, like to go through the 100 items that you talked about, what's the length of time? Are we talking hours, days, weeks?
When it comes down to doing the assessment, we realistically need about half an hour of time to discuss access from the customer. Again,
Okay.
are they sharing a OneDrive link or are we using a AD group? That it kind of the difference a little bit, but within half an hour we are indexing that data, and then roughly a week, 2 weeks later, we will present to you what did we find and everything else. Now, we always prefer it if there are some security people in there, because it's really simple. If I'm going to show a security person all the passwords, PII, and sensitive data that they have, all the copies of stuff maybe they shouldn't have access to, then the question is, of course, as a security professional, what do you expect from the rest of the company if this is your situation? So it's a little bit of a trick scenario, but being able to show what is truly happening within your organization absolutely will be eye-opening, and it's free.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Okay. Um, not don't have any other questions coming in right now, but I think that thanks
There's
again,
one,
guys. Always.
there is one coming in from Jim. Phil,
Oh,
I see
okay.
it. Yeah,
All right,
we'll let
cool.
him type it out here.
So
Yeah.
Jim, no pressure, but all eyes are on you.
Once a full assessment is completed, does your uh, company secure the data, or is it another company that would do the security?
Great question. So when it comes down to how does this all work together, we focus very strongly on the ability to identify, classify data. We can then use a security tool of your choice, whether it's Purview, OneTrust, Varonis, or whatever you have in mind. And most of those all use all of the standard functionality that Microsoft offers, effectively using Graph API. What we tend to do is we tend to be able to explain, well, here's where your data is. It needs the following label of sensitivity label. Now, from a company point of view, your organization, I don't know where you're from, so I'm just talking generically here, but we need to be able to map out what kind of policies, what kind of procedures, what kind of labels, what kind of sensitivity labels you have. And if we, for example, classify something as sensitivity level 5, whatever that means, we need to be able to map that to a purview sensitivity label level 5, right? To ensure that we map the rightly found data to the right sensitivity labels is very important. When we do this assessment, we can also show you. So for example, Microsoft Purview doesn't touch exchange data unless it's being changed. What do I mean with that? So there's a lot of data that we found. 90% of the data that we find, sensitive passwords, everything else is an exchange. Microsoft Purview labeling everything else doesn't touch it unless you're going to send it. So unless you send it or change it or add something to it, where within Microsoft it changes, it won't put a sensitivity label on it. It won't put a retention label. It won't put anything else onto it. So now, instead of ignoring over 90% of your password sensitive data, we actually go then to Purview or Varonis, or whatever you're using, to be able to automatically map that and apply it. So it is an automated process, but it does require a little bit of planning from Cadeon's side and your side to translate the question of what do you have on both sides, on the classification side and the sensitivity side and the labeling side, and how do we map those together?
And
Did I
I
miss
would
any?
also and I would also add, yeah, I would look at this tool almost from a governance standpoint, right? The readiness and how to do that. But the tool itself can be implemented within the organization, and then you can do automatic redaction of personal identifiable information. You can actually give your users the ability to better manage the risks there. So they can vault the data, they can delete the data, they can archive the data. And that's what this tool can sit in within your environment, and then connect with the Varonises and the Purviews and things like that. So they work in tandem versus competing against one another. Or parallel, I should say, in parallel, not in tandem.
Yeah. No,
Yeah,
it's
together.
it gets really interesting. So there's a lot more options that we do, and I don't want to go through all of them, otherwise we're just giving you a pure demo. But when we do these assessments, it gets really beautiful, because once you have a true understanding of what data you have, you can start building correlations between data. What do I mean with that? So let's say I send my employment contract to Amanda and Phil, and my credit card to Zach, and whatever it is. What we can do is we can start differentiate between who's a data subject matter, who's a data owner. In other words, just because I am sending my passport, to Amanda, doesn't mean that Amanda is necessarily the responsible owner or subject matter of that data. So it opens up everything when it comes down to, again, as long as you have the ability to truly identify, classify data, we're going to present you not just oh, do you want to delete it question, but we can really help you elevate with that next step on doing it. So just reading the comments, Jim, that you're currently identifying sensitivity labels. Yes. So we effectively, what would happen is, if you, I don't know how many you have, I don't know your data, I would love to chat at some point. But the point is really that even if you start small, you have 3 labels, 5 labels, or 10 labels, we would ask you a whole lot of questions. When you say priority 1, what does that mean? When you say we need to include something in AI ready, well, what does that mean? We're going to ask you a lot of very detailed questions. So again, it's the same with our classification. For us to identify a credit card, it's not just 16 letters together. We need something more to be able to be accurately identifying it. If we don't do it accurately, we're going to be processing a lot of fluff, and your AI is going to process a lot of fluff, and your security policy is going to be processing a lot of fluff. So there's always going to be a foundation, but taking that foundation, that means that we're going to create a ridiculous amount of options about stuff you probably haven't thought about. I'm not saying you in particular, I'm saying people in general get pretty shocked about the options that it creates.
It sounds like you're building a business, almost a business glossary then too. Yeah, from like, what are the terms? What do we actually mean, and how do we define that, and where can we store that? So when we say this internal, this is what we mean compared to, our neighbor across the street, right? And that's all fits really, really nicely into data governance, which, we talked about earlier, is, a core to all information, but certainly when we get into the world of AI and Well, Jenny, I as well. It's certainly going to be a profound discussion, I'll say. So, okay, well, I think this was really, really good, and I want to thank you guys, Yap and Sag, for your time, and thank you for being with us. And to all the attendees still on, thank you very much for your time and attention. And if you have questions, feel free to reach out to us. It's very simple, info@cadeon.com, or you can reach out to Amanda@cadeon.com or Phil@cadeon.com, and we're happy to coordinate with Yap and Sag going forward. So, again, thanks everyone for your time. We look forward to talking to you in the future, and look for our next webinar in August. Take care. Thanks, everyone.